Welcome to Talk with Tara, the podcast where we dive into the bold, the funny, and the fascinating. I'm Tara, your host, bringing you unfiltered conversations on life, love, and everything in between. Hit that follow button so you're always in the loop. And now let's get started. I'm so excited to introduce Greg Coe. He is a LinkedIn strategist. We all need that. We're all wondering what we're doing on LinkedIn. Are we doing the right thing? Are we getting the right followers? And he is also a career coach with over 20 years of sales and management experience, including top performing roles at VMware, Oracle, and Sun Microsystems. As the founder of GetLinked.pro, Greg helps job seekers, sales professionals, and business leaders unlock the full potential of LinkedIn to get noticed, land interviews, and close deals. His practical results-driven approach has helped clients triple recruiter outreach, 10x their profile views, and receive direct compliments from hiring managers during interviews. Greg is known for making LinkedIn optimization clear, actionable, and effective. Welcome, Greg. I'm so happy to have you today.
Tara, thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yay. Okay. Well, this is a really tough job market. I hear from friends all the time how hard it is to land a job. Really experienced, amazing people. Interviewing is their job. They keep getting rejections. It's just so hard. So before we get into these questions I have for you, how did you get into career coaching and working on optimizing our LinkedIn?
Thank you for asking. Next month, I'll have been on LinkedIn for 20 years. I was an early adopter, and I found it the best application I've ever used. I loved using it. It was a great tool as a sales person, as a sales manager. I received some training when I worked for Gartner, and they talked about some of the hidden things about LinkedIn, and suddenly the light bulb went on. I'm like, wow, there is way more to this than I realized. And I started doing research and realized that I could help people. I actually had a client of mine at VMware that was out of a job, and I reached out to them. Hey, do you need any help? And they said, well, yeah. And I said, would you like a few pointers on your LinkedIn profile? And he said, yes. And so I shared a few things. He came back to me pretty quickly and said, Greg, that worked. Wow. And I was like, I might be onto something here. And that was nearly 8,000 coaching clients ago.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you remember any of the pointers you gave him?
Yes, I do. One of them was he had listed his location as what I would call hyper local.
Okay.
He's in a Chicago suburb that's way out of the city. And I said, people may prejudge you and think, I wouldn't want to drive from there all the way to downtown or Lake County or the South Side. And so he might get looked over or passed over by somebody. And he said, I get what you're saying. He said, I'm going to change it. And so he cast the wider net and changed it to Metro Chicago. And then that wasn't the only reason he got it, but he very quickly was able to land it into his next position.
Yeah, that's a really good point because people are now coming back to the office. And if you put some obscure location, even today with all the remote workers, people may pass you by because there's been a mandatory come into the office rule now. So
RTO.
That's a really good tip right there. So thank you for that. Okay, so let's talk about job seeking and profile optimization. When they say LinkedIn optimize, what does that mean, Greg?
Well, I'll say this. Most people's profiles are astonishingly bad. They just are, right? I have plenty of clients, people I work with, family, friends. They'll set up a profile years ago and then don't touch it. And then they need to come back. Suddenly they have to get a job and they don't know all the levers. And there's probably about 75 different settings and fields and different things that you can set up. I just had a one-on-one coaching with somebody and they're like, I had no idea there was all this stuff in there. If somebody's just coming into it, I would say, whether it's me or someone else, do some research, seek some help, and it's like a fast pass. I had a CIO, one of my former clients, when I worked at Gartner, who knew what I was doing and hired me to help him. And he said, Greg, I could spend a couple months trying to learn all about LinkedIn, probably not know what you know, having been on for almost 20 years, and then I still haven't updated my profile. Or I could hire you for an hour or two and right, it's taken care of. What I really want is the next job, not necessarily to be an expert on LinkedIn.
Exactly. And, I've heard of tricks like when you put your photo in LinkedIn, save it as your keyword, like save it as executive communications expert or something like that. Like there's tricks
Good
that
idea.
we don't know. And there's also a way to find a job is if you go into the top where you have your search bar and you can say hiring for communications. And then all the people who are actually posting, and you can do, select people, and all the people who are posting for positions will come up for you. So I learned that trick. I don't know. I think my daughter taught me that trick. She saw it on Instagram. So there are a number of tricks, and a couple of tricks maybe you could give our listeners that they may not know.
Sure. To me, the big three, right? And they've done IMAP, heat map studies. Invariably, when somebody looks at a profile, the first three things they look at in this order are the headshot, the background picture or banner, and the headline section just underneath their name. You have 3 seconds, right, to make a good first impression. And so you need to make sure that you are delivering the best optimized experience there for that person looking. You want to create some interest and want them to dig deeper, right? You want to make a great first impression. So that headshot, which I can unpack, right? That's very important. That background, there's 6 or 7 different styles you can go with that. And then that headline certainly is very important to convey information about yourself.
Okay, so what should your profile photo look like? Give us some tips.
Couple things. You should be smiling. Mm-hmm. You should be in professional attire, what I would describe as interview clothes.
Okay.
Right? You want a neutral background. You want it head and shoulders and up, or armpits and up.
Okay.
I've seen them where, it looks like somebody's in a field like a mile away. Right. And I've seen some where it's so tight, it's like, no, just head and shoulders, just like what you're probably seeing of me on video and what I see of you, right? That's what you want to convey in a neutral background. I had one person, this just came up in the one-on-one I just had, and there was a person I'd worked with, and they had a picture of them and their spouse. And I asked them, do you bring your spouse to work? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, well, love them, but get them out of the picture. Like, do a new picture.
Right. And so why does the background have to be neutral? Because mine is a nature background.
Yeah, I've seen some good backgrounds and some not so good backgrounds. And so you just don't want it to be a distraction, right? Okay. The thing should be you that you're conveying.
Okay, what about AI photos? People are doing these AI headshots with these fake backgrounds. What do you think?
Yeah, that's fine.
Uh-huh.
If it will get you a better picture, then it's fine. My recommendation is that you have an updated photo every 1 to 2 years.
Okay.
And so whether it's you with a selfie that's not obvious, but it's almost nobody can take a good selfie without it looking like a selfie.
True.
Have somebody take a photo. By the way, on your most smartphones, right, the camera on the back is higher resolution than the selfie one, and you want a high-res picture. So I would recommend that it's, however you do it, that it's within the last 1 or 2 years. If you want, I'll give you a little backstory on this.
Yeah,
so when I was at VMware, I had a client of mine here in the Chicago area, and I did my homework. I'm going to go meet with an executive, right? I'm looking at their profile. I go to the meeting. 3 times in the meeting, I asked myself, is this person dying? I am not kidding, because they looked so bad in comparison to their photo. Now, I later found out the photo was 11 years old, right? It was probably taken late 20s, early 30s. Well, now they're in their 40s. The person had put on weight. They were gray, the wrinkles. And so if that was the first thing I'd seen, it'd be like, that's what they look like. Okay, right? But it was such a jarring difference from the photo that it was distracting.
Sounds like online dating. Oh, that's so funny. Okay, so it's really important, listeners, to have a neutral background just so you don't get distracted and there aren't weird things like your, Disneyland rides or anything. It's like, just try to have it neutral. Be smiling, because people want to work with people that are happy. But there's a fine line. Like, if you're too happy, you seem unprofessional, right? So how happy should you be in your photo, I always wonder that.
I think a smile that's showing some teeth without, to your point,
over-exuberance, right? Yeah. I tend to be over-exuberant. Yeah. So, okay.
If I recap on that, so smiling, professional attire or interview clothes, head and shoulders shot, neutral background, and high resolution.
Okay, high resolution. Okay, before we get into keywords, what about that little background piece? Like, I have the Golden Gate Bridge. What do you recommend? People say if you're working for a company, it should be the name of your company. What are your recommendations?
It can be. So the first thing is have something.
Okay.
If you have the blank background, that's a complete miss. Okay. Actually, I'm going to go back to photos, because some people don't have a headshot, or they only make it viewable to somebody they're connected with. Now, I get privacy. A short story. I was reading about a recruiter, and the recruiter said, hey, I'm looking for people that are serious about their career. If they're serious about their career, then they're serious about LinkedIn. And if they're serious about LinkedIn, they've got a professional headshot.
Right.
And when they see candidates that didn't have a headshot, they were immediately disqualified.
Interesting. Okay. That's a really
So,
good tip.
so there's that. On the background, if it's blank, to me, that's a complete miss. That can be the largest section of real estate on your profile. And it used to be years ago, you had to have a paid subscription to have a background photo. Well, that's long gone. So you need something, to your point, right? The nature shot, much better than nothing. But I'm a fan, if I look at it, there's 7 different styles that I can articulate very quickly that all can be good. One could be a word cloud. A second thing could be a quote. Third could be some sort of visual. Fourth could be company branding, like the logo that you had said, especially if you're a new hire, right? That you want to convey, I'm there, I'm happy, I'm proud of the company, I'm going, right? It could be industry acumen. It could be just flat out personal branding, or it could be an event. There were times when I was with Oracle in Open World or VMware with what was VMware World and now Explore, where if the event was coming up and I wanted to promote that and for my clients or prospects to see, I would change the background for that event for a period of time.
Well, that's good. That kind of switches it up. So everybody, if you're working for a company, usually if you go to their branding site, you can pull up a LinkedIn background. That's what I did when I was at VMware. I haven't done it at my new company. It's on my to-do list. But right now I put in the Golden Gate Bridge because I want people to know I'm from the Bay Area. And I think that's kind of a hot ticket. I live in Silicon Valley, so hire me. So, but you can put in something like that. I like the quote idea. And if you're a content creator or something like you do public speaking, maybe a photo of you speaking at an event in the background with a microphone. Okay, I like that tip. So now let's talk about keywords. How important are they and how do we use them? And before I get into this, I had a friend, I didn't think she was as experienced as I was, and no offense to my friend, but she was getting recruiters constantly asking her for positions, and I was getting nothing. And I thought, this has to do with my keywords. I'm bombing on the keywords, and I loaded it up. So what was I doing wrong?
So good question.
Okay.
Keywords are very important, and studies have shown that LinkedIn's algorithm weights heavily the keywords in your headline, up to 220 characters underneath your name. And so that is the most important place that you could put keywords. One, because it's weighted for the search engine algorithm. And the second thing is it's just visual. It's one of those first 3 things that most anybody looking at your profile are going to look at. And so this is a chance for you to make a great first impression right away. There's other places, many other places you can put keywords, but that if you were only putting them one place, your headline would be number 1.
So when people put things like thought leader, extraordinary salesperson at Meta, and then they put the best coffee maker on the planet, they should probably skip the best coffee maker on the planet. That seems to be a common thing now to show something kind of witty and funny. What are your thoughts on that?
I have mixed reaction to that one. I agree with some sort of a tagline can generate interest. I've got an example where somebody in the financial industry was hired, and then the hiring manager said, do you know how we found you, how you stood out? And the candidate said, no, how? And they said, we saw your profile on LinkedIn, and you closed with this tagline that said, I won the, I'll make it up, X or XYZ poker tournament. And they said, we know you couldn't have won that poker tournament without assessing risk. Well, guess what? We're a financial company. Every day in your job, you're going to have to assess risk. So that caught our attention. And that's why we interviewed you. You showed great. We're thrilled to have you. Can't wait for you to start. So it was the tagline that helped them kind of stand out.
So if they're unique, if it's unique to what makes you great, it could be a good idea.
Absolutely.
Okay. What are some other places, keywords, or what about in the description? What about description? Like, I'm always torn. Some people say, oh, tell a story. Be witty in your description. Oh, no, be professional in your description. Pile your keywords in your description. I mean, what is the true answer? What should your description look like?
So in description can also be known as the about section, right?
Right.
You get 2,600 characters in there. Well, that's about 3/4 of a type page. I just worked with somebody, they had 1,041 characters, including spaces, in their about section. They were only using about half the real estate. It's free. Now they may have a paid membership, but you're not paying by the word or the character.
Right.
And so I would have a bit of advice there. You would want keywords. Now you could list them. You could work them into sentences. It's important that you have white space, right? So spacing, maybe some emojis without too many, or bullet points, right? So that if you look at my profile, it's just under 2,600 characters, but over half of it is white space. For example, I like to start with a quote, right? If you look at mine, I have 2 client quotes that talk about the value that I've delivered for them. Well, there's a testimony. The first thing somebody that might be a prospective client for me sees is someone else saying, hey, he took care of me.
Right.
And so I've got the quotes. You could talk about a story. I love when people talk about why they do it or how they got into it. And you might have a list of skills which are keywords. And I've seen them in sentence form. I prefer and recommend the vertical format because you can have bullet point sales, bullet point SaaS, bullet point security, whatever it is. And you're leaving all this white space to the right of that. Where if you go sentence form, it's a block of text. It's just harder to read. And at a certain point, right, TLDR, too long, didn't read.
That's mine.
And so if you can break it up and have spacing, it's easier to read. And I love when people are personal and they may have a story, right? And they can share that story. People got into a field or didn't think I've seen several. I've got one. I don't have it in my about section where I've never thought I'd go into sales, right? My dad was in sales. Well, I'm going to do something different. Well, guess what? I had a long sales career, worked out pretty well. And thank you, Dad. So,
right.
But it was one of those, I deliberately wasn't going to do that. And then I had a manager who was like, hey, can you do this? Take on the sales role. I'm like, okay. And,
you're a nice guy. You're easy to be around. I'm sure you're a great salesperson. So I could see that transition.
Thank you.
Okay. So what about videos? I worked for LinkedIn this summer. I did a short stint there just working on their first company meeting. And I was working on the executives, with the executives on their platform. And while I was there, what I was learning and what they were saying over and over again, how important video is today. And video is where it's at. And I don't know if you see the Blackstone guy running with his videos, John Gray, I believe his name is. He's got so many followers. Can you tell us what you think about video on LinkedIn?
Video is captivating, right? YouTube, I don't need to say anything about it. It's it's a more than proven commodity. And so people love videos, right? They want to be entertained. I would say short and sweet.
Okay.
Right? It's a microwave society. A few seconds. You don't want a long listing. I had somebody's once that was 15 seconds long, and maybe I was impatient, but by about second 8, I'm like, I'm ready for him to be done.
Oh, wow.
But he just kept going
really
and going.
Okay.
So short and sweet is good. But the motion, it's captivating to the eye. I wouldn't build an entire profile just like loaded up with all kinds of videos, but a couple, right? Different topics, depending on what you're trying to convey.
Okay.
Can be very powerful.
Okay. So keep it short and sweet. Okay. So we talked about how important your personality is on LinkedIn, but can you give us some LinkedIn don'ts? What are some things that turn off a recruiter? You gave an example of like a bad photo, but what are some other things?
I'll give you 4 right out of the chute. So one would be skills. It used to be the limit was 50 skills. Over 2 years ago, they changed it and upped it to 100. A lot of people don't know that. I still see people publishing, you need to have your all 50 skills. It's like you're a couple years out of date with that advice, right? So have the 100 skills because over half of all recruiter searches have a skills filter, right? Okay. I'm looking for a cloud salesperson with SaaS and security. Well, those are skills that they're filtering on. If you don't have those somewhere in your profile, you're probably going to be missed. So don't short yourself. You want to have 100 skills and put them in priority order. You're allowed to stack the deck. So let's say somebody was at 50 and now I'm going to add another 50, which takes a while. The new ones automatically go on top. Okay. So if you saved your weakest one was the last one you did, well, suddenly, unless you reorder it, it's the first thing that people see. And your first 2 skills are the obvious ones. And then they have to click to see more, to see the rest of them. but search engine would find them wherever they are in that 100. So don't short yourself on skills.
Okay.
That's one. Second thing would be dates. Do not unnecessarily date yourself. And this can cut both ways. I've seen people that are right out of school. I've got 3 months experience. It's like, great, right?
Okay.
But we want somebody with more.
Right.
So you need to go out and earn that. But I wouldn't be highlighting, frankly, your lack of experience. The other side would be people that are very experienced, cap it at 20 years, maybe 25 max.
Okay.
Tara, I don't know about you. I've never seen a job posting that said must have 20 or 25 years experience, right? The most I've ever seen is 15 for a very detailed, complex IT type of a role.
Good point.
So typically, thing in your profile before, let's say, the year 2000,
Okay.
I would tend to drop out. Save it for your resume or your CV or your long list of everything file that's got everything.
Okay.
But I would cut off a certain point. Now, if you did something before the year 2000 that is 100% relevant to what you're doing today or what you want to do next, maybe, right? I've had some people, hey, I worked for this company and they're important because my network of those people and I want to list that. Okay. But ideally, you're cutting off at about 2005 or 2000 from a date perspective. Also, the email that you use for your personal business email says something about you, right? So to me, the ultimate would be tara@tara.com, right? A personalized, that's Rolls Royce, awesome. Okay. Second would be something from this millennium, right? Gmail, etc.
I agree.
I still see people, and there's nothing
Hotmail.
wrong with them for personal, but with Yahoo email addresses.
Hotmail.
And Hotmail, AOL. Now, if you're
Yes.
selling to senior citizens, great, right?
Yeah, right.
But a lot of us aren't.
Right.
So you want to have something from this century, millennium, and so that would be another thing. Third thing, besides skills and dates, would be typos, right? Are just like nails on a chalkboard for me. I hate that. And if I'm a hiring manager, if there's typos in their profile, I'm concerned. Because that either how is their grammar, how is their attention to detail, it just says something about them. Have somebody proof your profile to look for that stuff, because sometimes we've seen it. This isn't really a typo, but it's grammar. I worked with a C-level executive, top, super sharp guy, and we're going through his profile, and I said, "Why are all of your past roles written in present tense? Right? You don't work there anymore." And he put his hand to his forehead and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm snowblind. I've looked at my profile 100 times. I've never noticed that.
Right.
Thank you for calling it out. I'm going to change it tonight."
Right. Okay, that's really good.
So typos and tense. And then the last one would be duplicates. Don't duplicate. I've seen people where they have a school listed twice or they have 2 profiles, those sorts of things. And the way people usually fall into that, years ago, they created a LinkedIn profile and then stalled. They didn't finish it. They put it away. And then 2 years later, hey, I should have a LinkedIn profile. They go and create a new one, but never deleted or merged the two together.
Okay.
So
That's
duplicates, profiles, or degrees, those sorts of things, it's not uncommon.
Okay, that's good. Good tip. All right, so dates. The problem with LinkedIn, like if you're a new college grad, it doesn't allow you to put just like the year.
Sure it does.
It does? Don't you have to put the month and the year?
You don't have to. In the field where you're putting the year, okay, so let's pretend I'm a new college grad, right? And I'm starting a new job this month, right? It's April. And so I could go in and put 2025 for the year. There'll be a drop down for the month. If you just click month instead of picking one, it just lists 2025.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's a really good tip. I didn't realize that. Okay,
now,
that's
there's
really
times,
great.
let's say it's now November or December. Well, if I started in January, I might want to list January because I've been there all year.
Right.
Because 2025 might be, November 1st. Mm-hmm. But you would already have 9 or 10 months, 11 months of experience before that date that was listed.
Okay, that's really good. So what about that open to work? So I've been told that open to work circle that's green is a no-no, that it shows desperation. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to give you the classic consultant answer.
Okay.
It depends.
Okay.
So here's what studies are showing. I'm a fan of it in some circumstances.
Okay.
I just worked the call literally right before this one. Somebody that's currently employed somewhere, but is looking, but they don't want to let the company know. So clearly you're not going to put the hashtag open to work wreath there, right? That's obvious. 40 million members on LinkedIn are using it right? So that's greater than the population of Metro New York, right? Largest
Okay.
metro
Wow.
in the US. You've got another 160 million that are privately looking
Right.
but wouldn't have the wreath. The people that have the wreath are saying, I'm getting 40% more recruiter in-mails because I'm saying I'm available. Think about it. There are some people that are never going to leave a given company.
Right.
They're either opposed to change, they're doing so well, whatever, right? Some people will never leave. You could put a bag of money in front of them to change job. They're not going to do it.
Right.
So why, if I'm a recruiter, I need to have some sense of, is this person willing to make a change?
Oh, interesting.
And so
Okay.
the open to work's telling them, I'm motivated, I'm doing something. But the other thing is that 85% of the people putting the hashtag open to work green wreath are getting more support from their network. For example, if I see somebody that's got that I know, that I care about, and I've got a sliver of time, I will are you okay? Do you need anything? How can I help you? Right?
Right.
And the community is reaching out to them. I have a client of mine that said this wouldn't be with hashtag open to work, but their profile visibility of who could see if they looked at their profile. So I'm going to go on a tangent for a second. They had it turned on. And the person said, hey, I'll say his name was Jim. Hey,
Okay.
Jim, I saw you looked at my profile. Are you looking for a job?
Huh?
And Jim said, I am. And the person said, I may have something for you, right? So it was the digital footprints of them looking at that profile. Now, that's something you can turn off and on like a water spigot. I typically leave mine in private mode, and I don't have to worry about it. But if I was contacted by a recruiter or a hiring manager and I know I'm going to have a call with them, I would turn it on to public. I'd go leave digital footprints on their profile. I looked at it, right? They may or may not look at that and see that I did that. They can if they look, but I've at least done my part. If I'm a hiring manager and I have two pretty equal candidates and one has done their homework, I can see they looked at my profile. And even better, the talk track or the questions are relevant to my profile or the things that are important to me. They're getting the nod. They did their homework.
Okay. I see. That's really good.
One other comment on the hashtag open to work. Remember I said it depends.
Right.
There's some people that if they're currently employed, they can't put that out there, right? So I totally get that. But you can do one of three things. Let nobody know you're looking, right? In some way. You can let just recruiters, not at your company, see that you're looking. That's a good play. Or you can overtly look. I have plenty of clients that take what I'll call a phased approach. Right? Depending on their budget and their financial situation, they might go 30, 60, 90 days without putting that out there, right? How good is their network? Do they have connections or can they find something quickly? If so, great, right? All set. At a certain point, urgency or more urgency sets in. I've got to do something and the time's running out. And then they may go to hashtag open to work, right? And put the wreath on there. If you're overtly looking and telling lots of people, I would probably put it on there. But it's either for pride or privacy with the company. There's certain circumstances where it just doesn't work. So it's not for everybody, and it can be situational.
Right. That's a really good point. So, Greg, why is it so hard, to get a job today? I know that the market's it's volatile right now, and it was volatile before with interest rates moving up higher and higher. But God, it's really hard for people out there, really smart people. What's your advice to them when they're just struggling and they just feel like, I had a friend the other day, I was trying to help her and she's like, I've had 80 interviews. And a lot of people don't even recruiters out there, they don't even follow up. Like you spend hours preparing for an interview, you do your homework, you do what you're supposed to do. And they don't even say, sorry, we've decided to go with the net. You just they ghost you.
Well, that's painful.
Yeah. So any advice to those people?
Yeah, a couple thoughts. Almost nobody likes looking for a job. Even if you're gainfully employed and you're now trying to advance in your career, most people don't want to do that, right? It's just not their natural thing to do. And looking for a job is a job. It can be a full-time job, right? And so if you're working or in transition, it can be a heavy lift. A couple things. I think people need to go into it knowing it's probably not going to change overnight.
Okay.
I saw stats that said pre-pandemic, so early 2020, it took the average person about 3 weeks to land a new position. It's now at about 22 weeks, according to to U.S. government stats. And so that's 7 times longer.
Right.
So buckle up because, right, you may be looking for months where it used to be much easier, so to speak, 5 years ago. So it's not easy. And look at all the tech rifts that have gone on. I won't even list the companies, but most of them are household names. And many, many people have been let go that are players.
I know.
You've got a lot of you've got a lot of competition. You talked about RTO, return to office. For some people, that's a showstopper, right?
Right.
Either circumstances or they've just gotten used to working remote or hybrid and don't like, so those companies that require RTO a significant chunk of the time, that may be a showstopper.
So maybe put in your LinkedIn that you're open to going to the office.
Sure.
Right?
I think
that could
so.
be a differentiator.
If you are, I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that, but that's a great idea.
Yeah. Because if I were the hiring manager and I wanted them in office and they're like, hey, I'm willing to come in, I'd look at them first than someone who's like, nope, I want to be remote. Right. Yep. So, yeah.
And there's a field. If you click into, I'm open to a new position, whether it's with the hashtag open to work green wreath or just to recruiters, you can indicate 3 different types of jobs, on-site, hybrid, or remote.
Okay.
Check every one that you can that's relevant, right? So if on-site, it doesn't work for you. Now, I've had people that have said to me, I don't want to have to go to an office. I'm like, so what if it was you had to go in 2 days a week? Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, for a good paying job, like I could probably make that work. And let's think about it, right? Early on, and I know for me, early on in positions, I want as much involvement from my manager, coworkers, support team. I want to learn everything. I want to take it in, right? I'm drinking from the fire hose and I want as much contact as I can get. And at a certain point, you earn your stripes, right? And so you might be able to phase into less and less that you need to be in the office.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, don't let that deter you if you're looking for a job at all. Okay, so I highly recommend people to use their network. Even if you don't know someone really well and they're at a company, they were at your former company, because I speak from experience, and you reach out to them and they promote you within their company, that is huge. So I would definitely, and I've even gone so far as telling the recruiter, look, my going rate is this, but I know the market's tough. So if I'm going to get hired, if I take a cut, don't worry about it. I'll take the cut because I know that cream always rises to the top. So my hard work will be paid for in the future. Maybe not today, but maybe in a year, it'll all get fixed. So those are some tips that I've had, like really, really rely on your network. Reach out to everyone you know, but don't be desperate, because I have heard that this feeling of desperation can have this kind of energy that recruiters get turned off. What do you think of that?
I would agree. It's, again, almost nobody wants to look for a job. Mm-hmm. And so now they're having to do this undesirable task. And sometimes in the worst of circumstances, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they're caught in a layoff, a RIF, and they're one of thousands from a company that are now let go. So it's not easy, but I think a couple things. To me, there's the big 3. You hit the one is your network. Work your network, and there's plenty, you and I can talk about that here. A second thing would be to optimize your LinkedIn profile. We've touched on some of those things, so that you're presenting your best self, right? That profile is optimized, and a strong resume, right? So if you're touching all 3 bases, you're doing just about everything you can to advance yourself in your career. From a network perspective, I actually have shown this tactic I've done, I think, 80 webinars since 2020, about one a month, training people how to leverage LinkedIn to advance their career. And I talk about hashtag hiring. And there's a search that you can do for people that are in your network that somehow in their profile indicate that they are hiring. And so then you do kind of a filter of that. Well, who's overtly saying they're hiring? And I look for, who do I know best? Who do I like most? Who do I trust most? Who works at the most interesting companies? And that becomes my short list. When I moved in Chicago, I grew up in this area, but for a long stretch, we lived in Colorado. And when it was time to move back, I did this search and I identified my top 24. It was Christmas Eve, and I identified my top 24 prospects that out of my network, and reached out to them and said, hey, big news. I'm moving back to Chicago. And and I kind of elaborated. And one person came back and said, I've got just the job for you.
Right.
And I was one of two finalists instantly.
Wow. Okay. So
also,
listeners, the hashtag is in the search field, and you just put hashtag hiring on the left side of your LinkedIn. And you can put hashtag hiring and then pick people versus jobs so that people will show up and they'll say they're hiring. Correct?
Yeah. And then I would go, so you're exactly right. Hashtag hiring. So you're saying what you're looking for, and then people. And then the next thing you would do is that you would click on first level connections, who you're already connected with.
Oh, okay. That's a good tip.
If you have a premium account, there will be a field at the top, actively hiring, which will show everybody that's got the purple hashtag hiring wreath, which is, that's a great list of work.
So premium's worth it, Greg? Premium?
It depends.
Okay.
Right? I don't work for LinkedIn. I'm not an affiliate. Greatest app I've ever used, but I am independent from them. But a premium account can pay for itself. Let's come back to that because that's a whole other topic. And here's what I find. When people run the hashtag hiring, if I was job searching, that is the number one thing I'm doing is working my network because it's worked for me multiple times in a big way. And what I'm finding is on average, about 5% of somebody's network typically will show up in that filter of hashtag hiring. So the bigger your network, the more you're going to see. Here's an example. I ran this. My network, I'm sitting at about 11,000 people right now.
Wow.
I had over 400 that came up on that filter, which was 4%.
Okay.
But again, the average is somewhere between 5 to 8%. So let's go back to Junior that had 37 connections. Well, guess what? You're going to get almost nobody. If somebody's got a large network, statistically, they're just more likely. Now, if your network is manager and above, better, right? If it's a lot of individual contributors, they typically have no hiring power. Now, they have some influence maybe, but not that hiring power. So I would tend to work up the food chain of looking for people at manager, senior manager, director, VP, C-level positions.
Okay.
Also, you talked about something about somebody that could coach you. Let's go back to VMware, right? I was at VMware for almost 6 years. If someone came to me with their resume and a job rec number, and I thought they would be a good hire, I would not hesitate to recommend them. It took me 2 minutes. If they got hired, I got a $2,000 bonus.
Right.
Of course, if it's good for the company and it's good for them, by the way, the company's giving me a spiff, everybody wins.
Right. Exactly. So, that's why it's good to reach out to your network. It's not like they're just doing you a favor. They're getting a perk too.
Right. Now, I just interviewed not that long ago, somebody from ServiceNow, Rebecca Geis, is based in LA and is now an area vice president. And we talked about this, and I actually have the recording on my website. And she said, because I'm in a hiring position, I would not be eligible for that.
Oh, yes. I've heard that. Yeah.
Which makes sense, right? Because they've got hiring power and you wouldn't want any conflict of interest. Right. So sometimes having the individual contributor refer you in, but we all would probably rather hire somebody we know and know their track record than a stranger. Yeah. And so that whole working your network, right, of the big three, your network, your optimized profile, and your resume, you can really lean heavy on that, on the network side of it.
So let's say, Greg, you get the job. This has happened to a number of people I know, a number of people. You get the job, you get in there, and it's miserable. It's not the right fit. It's a bad job market. What do you do? What would you say to me if I were your client?
Yeah, if only all of us could have a crystal ball that could tell us ahead of time. I think back, there are certain jobs where I look back to Sun Microsystems, one of the greatest jobs I ever had. I knew in the first week this was going to go really well. It just felt right. It all made sense. It just like clicked. I've had other jobs where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be tough. Or a coworker, a manager, whatever, that's like, this is going to be tough to deal with. I think if you land in a situation where it's like, oh, did I just make a big mistake? A couple pieces of advice. I would do the best job you can where you are. Sometimes it's a manager that's not effective. Well, guess what? You're probably not the only person that sees that.
Right.
And so that person may be moved out or over, right? So that can be part of it. So I would get in there, but I would probably change my recruiter settings privately to I'm looking.
Okay.
So I'm working this thing as best I can, But at night, I'm putting out some feelers. And if I can get something better and it's truly better, I would likely go for it.
Right.
Then you've got a decision to make, right? When you get an offer, and we can get into that, but let's say you accept this position, if you've only been there a short time, you might not even list that you were at that company on your LinkedIn profile, right?
Right, exactly.
Now, I can't say what's the cutoff because it depends, but if it's short term, it might not even be worth listing.
Yeah,
Right?
I totally agree with you. Do not
It might
list
not have
it.
been a good experience. And does anybody really want to talk about that? Probably not. Now,
No.
that might be a learning experience. Well, for example, let's say I'm working at company A, but it's not working out. And now I'm talking to company B. They're probably going to ask me, hey, you've only been there 2 months. What's going on?
Right.
Well, right. And think of the classic phrase, right? People join organizations and leave managers.
So what do you say if they say, let's say you've had it on your resume for 6 months or LinkedIn because you've been there for 6 months.
Yep.
And they say, why do you leave? And there was a crappy manager. I mean, there are crappy managers.
There
are
are
managers. Like my friend is going through that right now. She's in misery. And you just say, do you say like, well, it just wasn't the right fit? Or
To me, the easy button is I'm looking for a better opportunity, or I left, right? If it's already done, I left for a better opportunity, right? It may be more responsibility, more pay, less commute. There's a lot of good reasons why somebody would make a change. And if I'm a hiring manager, and I was one for 8 years, right? You never, if the person you're hiring, right, there's no 100% guarantee. Even somebody the new role might not be a good fit for them, right? So everybody's taking a chance. The hiring team is, and the new employee are both taking a chance. And it just doesn't always work out. And I would say, cut your losses, right? If you're not happy, if it's just not working, why suffer, right? Work.
people have insurance and kids and they're trapped.
I get that, but work that, but look for something better, whatever that is.
The old adage, look for a job while you have one, and then you're not desperate. And it's so important to keep your job and look for a job at the same time. I can't say that enough to all of you listeners. As we wrap up, Greg, a couple questions. If you could wave a magic wand, fix one thing on every job seeker's LinkedIn profile, what would it be? Like, what's your
it's a target-rich environment. There's lots to choose from. I'd say probably the headline.
Okay.
Because it's the most heavily weighted from a search engine algorithm perspective, and it says something about that person, right? So it's personal branding, and I see some great ones. I see some that are not so hot.
Okay. Well, that's really good. So tell us as we wrap up where people can find you. I know I saw your interview with the lady who was an executive at ServiceNow, and I really enjoyed that. So thanks for putting on these webinars. I think they're very interesting, and I love learning new things all the time. So that's kind of my passion. I'm a growth mindset kind of person. But as we wrap up, can you tell people how they can find you on LinkedIn or what your website is? And I will also put this in the show notes. And if you have any final advice for some of our listeners who are ready to take on their job search, that'd be great too. Maybe end with one tip.
Yeah, the contact info, my LinkedIn profile, this is Greg Coe, GregCoe. My company is getlinked.pro, and yes, .pro is a domain. It has been for a long time. And so my contact info is in there. You can send me a DM on LinkedIn. And you mentioned it on my website. I've got a tab that says recorded events. There's 5, I think, and people tell me, really good sessions in there. They're free. They're on demand. You can get in there and listen to those now. And one's with an interview with a headhunter, one's with an in-house recruiter at Oracle, one's with Rebecca from ServiceNow, and what does a hiring manager look for? I was interviewed kind of like this with a top social media guy about LinkedIn. And so those are all posted and available at people's convenience.
I know. I could tell, Greg, you have an abundance mindset and you give back a lot. So thank you for that. People like you are very special, and we need to give back to those who are looking for a job. So thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for the conversation today.
Great. Tara, thank you for inviting me. And I love what you're doing. So keep it up.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thanks for listening to Talk with Tara. If you love today's episode, follow the show and share it with a friend. Stay tuned. There's so much more to talk about. See you next time.